Depo Talk, Depo Talk. Another topic broken down on Depo Talk. Wonder what it could be. Let's check in with Jan and Rosalie.
Welcome to Depo Talk with Veritext principals Jan Ballman and Rosalie Kramm. Each episode looks at a deposition or proceeding-related topic of the day through the lens of two industry veterans with over 80 combined years of experience. And now, without further delay, we are on the record. Take it away, Jan and Rosalie.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Depo Talk. I'm Jan Ballman, and I'm coming to you from the land of 10,000 lakes, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
And I'm Rosalie Kramm, coming to you from sunny San Diego.
Rosalie, one of the hottest topics in court reporting today is the return of in-person proceedings. They're populating every agency calendar across the country to one degree or another, and people are weighing in on this with differing perspectives. There's the perspective of court reporters, both those who are willing to take in-person depos and those who prefer not to. There's the perspective of our clients, both the attorneys and their support staff. And then there's the perspective of reporting agencies, both the firm owner and the people in the firm who are responsible for assigning the calendars. So there's a lot to unpack on this subject, Rosalie.
You know, this is the perfect topic for Depo Talk because it's hot.
It is hot. All right. Now you're a working reporter, and we were both just recently at a national court reporting conference, and we also had the opportunity to talk to other reporters from all over the country. So can you start off the conversation by talking about some of the perspectives that are out there from the lens of court reporters with regard to in-person proceedings?
Well, Jan, court reporters have embraced being home for remote depositions. They love the efficiency of time, the fact that they don't have to get in a car and travel anywhere. They are able to exercise in the morning, perhaps, or walk their dog during lunch. So having remote depositions has been a real blessing for court reporters as far as time, efficiency, and even making more money. Let's say you do a 10 o'clock deposition and across town, there's a 2 o'clock that you would be able to cover now with a remote setting, and you would not be able to get to that second deposition otherwise. So there's so many more efficiencies. I feel like maybe you can make more money with the remote depositions. It's a very popular way to go. And thus the topic today.
Well, there's no question that remote reporting was an epic game changer in our industry, and there's certainly a lot to love about working from home. I certainly loved the 2 years we didn't have to go into the office or go anywhere, really. It was truly life-changing, and it was a great gig while it lasted. But then the business need returned to have office coverage and to host depositions for clients. So then we had to go back to the office to meet that client need. But it's nice that it's hybrid, so we can all still enjoy working from home most of the time. And actually, it's been fun to get back in the office and see people a couple of times a week. You know, you forget how much you miss that human connection and interaction.
Absolutely, Jan. You know, I've been doing some of the in-person depositions, and I'm finding that attorneys are so grateful to see me, to see a person, and to have their court reporter. They want to talk to us. And when we do in-person depositions, when you walk in the room, you command a presence, and people respect us. They respect us no matter what, but when you're there, physically there, there's more of a respect. Let's think about the fact that there's hearing issues, listening as far as remote deposition. Sometimes it's hard to hit the audio. Maybe the internet's not really strong. Your bandwidth is a little weak. In an in-person deposition, you have perfect hearing. You can hear everything. You can anticipate by body language if someone's going to object. You can interrupt if they're talking at the same time. We all know how much easier it can be just to be in person in a room with people. And, you know, it's kind of fun to get dressed up and to go out again. So there are so many advantages to go back to in-person. I've been doing them. I like the remotes, but the in-person actually has some advantages that we need to remember.
Yeah, I think we forget that they're really easier for the reporter for all those reasons. And then you mentioned something to me while we were at the conference about what some of the clients have been saying about maybe kind of a civic duty to kind of get back downtown and out and about.
Yeah, I was talking to an attorney from New York, and she feels that she has a duty to go back and to have lunch downtown and just to have people walking, the energy. bring the energy back to the downtown. So there might be that responsibility in some people's minds as far as making downtown alive again.
Right. It's kind of on all of us to do that. Those are great points. I remember back in April 2020 when literally everything canceled: school, church, funerals, weddings. And of course, that meant depositions canceling, which also meant for freelance reporters, paychecks canceling. And when it became apparent that remote, or what we used to say, video conference depositions, were going to be the only way that litigation was going to move forward, a lot of reporters had a lot of anxiety around that. After all, the standard was to pay a premium to reporters to report video conference depositions in recognition of all the difficulties and challenges that the remote depots can present technologically for reporters. So now look at us, the majority of reporters, as you said, have completely embraced remote work, remote reporting, and actually like it better. So I think it's kind of a good reminder for all of us that the human condition tends to be, we to fear and push back on change. It's easier and more comfortable just to stay in your lane. It can be hard to learn new things, but usually it's just short-term pain, and then you get to enjoy long-term gain. Or as the old adage was, the early bird gets the worm. But in court reporting, maybe we should say the early adapters get the worm, because, nothing in this world is going to stay the same for long anymore, is it, Rosalie?
No, it certainly isn't. And change is good.
Change can be good, right? All right. Well, we talked about returning to in-person proceedings from the perspective of the reporters. We understand why people love remote, and there's definitely pros and advantages to the in-person as well. So now let's look through a different lens. Rosalie, you and I are former firm owners. We ran court reporting agencies for many years. So let's talk about the return of in-person proceedings from the perspective of agency owners. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Jan, agency owners are in a tough spot right now because obviously they've embraced remote work. They've had to, and attorneys want their reporters to come back in person, and a lot of reporters don't want to go back. So the agency owners are having to figure out ways to cover their calendar. And with in-person reporters, they prefer remote depositions many times, I'm sure. It's easy to get a last-minute reporter. If someone forgot a videographer, it takes 5 minutes to get a videographer on a remote deposition, whereas before it would take 45 minutes for a videographer to get in their car, get there, set up. You look at the fact that conference room space, hosting depositions costs a lot of money when you look at the leases and the staffing. So if the whole world was remote forevermore, agency owners, they might not be that sad about that.
I agree. It really comes down to that we're in the service business, right? I liken it to, what if we own coffee shops and instead of reporting agencies, and a customer came in and ordered a cappuccino, and we told them, hey, sorry, we only serve black coffee because it's a little more convenient for us, costs us less, make a little more, less wear and tear on our baristas. So, we don't do black coffee. Well, if the customer wants black coffee, if the customer wants the cappuccino, they're not going to settle for black coffee just because that's what we prefer to sell and because it's more efficient for us. Same with agency owners. They have to provide the service the clients are asking for. They just have to. So attorneys are ordering in person. The agency owners need to find a way, and it's not easy right now. Although I will say, I think they do try sometimes when the situation is really desperate to talk attorneys into that hybrid situation and having the reporter appear remotely, even if everyone else is in person, because that's the best we can do in that situation. But I think it's pretty much like trying to talk the coffee drinker into getting black coffee when they want the cappuccino.
Yes, I've been in situations where I've been the remote reporter just because there was nobody available in the geographical area that they had a deposition. And it's stressful for the court reporter. It's difficult for the attorneys because just being able to hear everything obviously is important. And if the reporter is having to interrupt the proceedings so they can make sure they heard the last sentence or phrase, or if there are 6 or 7 attorneys in the room, you're not sure who's speaking, you have to ask them to ID themselves before they speak. That after a while, the attorneys are getting irritated. I've heard from some videographers that attorneys don't like it when the reporter is remote and everybody else is in the room. And actually, as a court reporter, I know we don't like, it's not a best case scenario for us as well to be remote where everybody else is in the room. Sometimes it's the only way we can move forward. But the fact is, it's a tough situation.
I agree. Really good point there. So talking about the stress on the firm owner, another perspective is the firm owner's staff. If they have one, maybe it's just the firm owner himself or herself that's assigning the calendar. But let's talk about the assigners. What are job assigners saying in terms of in-person proceedings? Do they like them? You know, what are you getting the vibe from the assigners with regard to in-person proceedings?
Well, Jan, the reason that I'm doing in-person depositions is because I feel so sorry for the assigners. You know, they will first send an email and then a couple hours later might call me, send a text message saying, I'm desperate to cover this deposition. And I can only imagine their only job is to cover calendar. And if no one will do the in-person depositions, if they can't source a court reporter, then they can't go home. And for them to have to tell the agency owner or even call the client, maybe they are the person who has to call the client and say, I'm sorry, there is no in-person court reporter that I can find for you tomorrow. That horrible feeling, it's a service business. And so because I have so much empathy for them, that's one reason I've been going to do the in-person depositions. And, you know, like I said before, it actually turns out that they're kind of fun. So I'm kind of glad I'm doing that.
Well, you know, to borrow a phrase from you, there's 0.0 doubt in my mind about the fact that the assigners who have such a tough job, I've heard too, I know as well, just from being in the office, that the in-persons are really hard to cover, and in some places in the country more than others. So when you can help those assigners get those jobs covered, they'll take care of you too. So meaning, you know, you scratch their back and they'll scratch yours. That's just the way it works in life, right? And really, it's the only fair way to deal with this situation, I guess. Whenever or however you can show team players out there that you appreciate them, do it. And usually we do that with the calendar. So, all right, shifting gears again, Rosalie, you're a reporter out in the field most days, as we've talked about. So therefore, also you have the opportunity to speak with attorneys. So what are attorneys saying about the return of in-person proceedings? I mean, I know a lot of attorneys have really enjoyed working from home. They don't want to go down to the office 5 days a week anymore. They're not going to do that. So why do you think then they're going back to in-person proceedings?
Well, I've been asking attorneys that because I've been curious myself. Why are we here for this in-person deposition? And inevitably, the attorney who's defending the witness tells me I need to be in the same room with my witness when they're being deposed. I need to be with my witness. And the taking attorney will say, I don't trust necessarily that the witness remotely is not getting coached in any way. I also like the fact that I can show power. When you walk in a room as an attorney, you have a presence. And I was talking to a law school class last night and introducing them to court reporters. And the dean, the teacher, said that he sees the situation in which the witness might be sitting there at their remote location and someone's got a whiteboard in front of their computer and writing down the answers. And I told the attorney, I said, there's no way that would ever happen. And he says, well, I believe it could happen. Therefore, I'm going to have every deposition that I ever take in person. So the attorneys just feel they need to be in the room with the witness, either taking or defending.
Well, that makes perfect sense. But again, really, it doesn't even matter why the attorneys prefer the in-person to remotes. All that matters is that, you know, as high-end court reporting agencies, if that's what the client wants, that's what the agency needs to provide, right? So, all right, that's very insightful, getting some insights into the what and why attorneys are asking for reporters to come into the space with them again. So the last frontier in this in-person proceedings perspective discussion, it's hard to say fast. It may be the last perspective, but it certainly should not be the least considered perspective. And I'm talking about the unsung heroes in law, the same folks who are often the ones choosing the court reporter, talking about the legal assistants, the legal secretaries and paralegals. So Rosalie, what are you hearing from paralegals and legal secretaries about their perspective on in-person proceedings?
Well, they are stressed out because they're mandated. Their attorney says, okay, I need you to set up a deposition and I want it to be in person. I want an in-person court reporter. So they go about their tasks to set the deposition up. And some agencies might say, I'm going to try to get you an in-person reporter. I might have to give you a remote reporter. And that's a little confusing for the legal secretary, the paralegal. That's not what they want to hear because their attorney told them they need to have an in-person reporter. Or there was a situation a couple of weeks ago that I was talking to a paralegal at a very high-profile IP litigation type law firm, and she said they had a deposition scheduled in Washington, D.C. to start at 9 a.m. And at 2 o'clock the day before, which is 5 o'clock in Washington, D.C., she got a phone call saying, you know what, we cannot find a court reporter. I'm so sorry. And she said, what do you mean you can't find a court reporter? And so she right away started shaking, basically worried because she knew her boss was going to be mad if there is no court reporter there. So she's starting to call everybody agency in Washington, D.C. She finally was able to find someone, but she said that feeling was horrible. So these are our clients. These are the people that
pay our paychecks, really. Yeah.
Our paychecks. So as a court reporters, we have to consider going back to do in-person depositions, make it the sacrifice because the client is the client and they're the ones who have to tell us what's going to happen.
Right. And, I'm sure most of us haven't really given that perspective much, thought at all. But when you take that kind of stress off the legal professionals and help them get it done, it truly does cement their loyalty to that reporting firm, as opposed to the scenario you just described, saying, oops, sorry, and to that end, at least you're rewarded for your efforts in doing whatever it takes to get them what they need, because they will trust you and call you again. And that's kind of what this is all about, right?
Absolutely.
So, Rosalie, this has been a super interesting discussion. One we hope that shines some light on the various perspectives out there surrounding the return of in-person proceedings. And if I were to summarize, I think my top 3 takeaways are, number 1, there are pros and cons that go with both remote and in-person proceedings. So why not just, hashtag embrace the pros. Secondly, we just can't forget that we're in the service business. We exist to serve attorneys. That's how we make our paychecks. So if we don't deliver on their service needs, someone else or something else will. Lastly, they say God helps those who help themselves. And I think we just need to remember that calendar assigners take care of those who help them. So what about you, Rosalie? What are your leave backs or takeaways?
Well, one of the tips that a reporter suggests, and I think is a really good idea, is to have a separate pack, your, let's say, to-go pack, because one of the stresses is making sure that you've packed everything, you've got every cord, everything you need if you're switching from remote to go out to an in-person. So if you have a separate pack with everything, maybe you don't have 2 steno machines, but have everything but that extra steno machine. It's a lot easier. You don't have to think so much or worry that you've forgotten something.
Kind of an in-person pack, if you will.
Exactly, an in-person pack. And another thing is, just like we said before, talk to your calendar people and ask them, what can I do for you? If I do 1 in-person deposition a week, would that help? Or 2 every month, whatever it is. Geographically, it's different all over the United States from what I understand. Some reporters can't wait to go back to the in-persons. In other locations, people don't want to go back. So ask the calendar people in your area, your calendar person, what would be helpful for them. And then the other thing I would say is just consider going back, because it is actually kind of fun to get dressed up. I know you've got maybe a great suit you love or some shoes that you want to wear again, and you get to go downtown, you get to feel a little fancy, maybe go out to lunch. Going back to in-person is not as difficult mentally as it seems. It's different. We're changing again. We're pivoting again. But as court reporters, that's what we do. And I'm so proud of who we are and what we do. And the attorneys respect us so much. So I would just suggest, if you consider going back to do some in-person depositions, you might be really find that it's much nicer than you think. And it would really, really help actually our whole industry.
I agree. Great points. As always, Rosalie. So that's going to do it then for this episode of Depo Talk. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And we're off the record.
Depo Talk. Depo Talk. Another topic broken down on Depo Talk.